people are going through trauma, and when they are going through trauma, what are some of the things we should or shouldn't do to try to make that deeper connection, make it easier on them, make it easier on us, have some positive interaction because of it.
If we can just have a little bit more compassion in the world, it would just make it just such a better place. Just an ounce, not a, you don't have to have a lot, just an ounce of compassion can change the trajectory literally of the world and someone's life.
Welcome to This Too Shall Suck podcast, a fresh perspective on grief. I'm Loryn Denise, just your average millennial out here trying to have a conversation about a taboo topic that nobody wants to talk about. It's important to know that grief doesn't just happen when you lose someone. It can happen at any moment in your life. And it doesn't have to be all bad. It can actually be a really beautiful process. And as a millennial who had to process her own grief, I knew it was important to bring a more lighthearted, fresh perspective and create a safe space to discuss a topic that is typically uneasy. As I always like to say, we like to talk about the real of grief, the whole grief, and nothing but the grief. This Too Shall Suck podcast, a fresh perspective on grief, starts now.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back, you guys, to another week's episode of This Too Shall Suck podcast, a fresh perspective on grief. If this is your first time here, welcome to the grief party that nobody asked to be here. But we all love each other and we're all trying to be the best version of ourselves. If this is your 40, I don't even know what episode, 40 something time being here. Thank you so much. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. So today we're going to dive into the grief of trying to find your purpose, right? So grief and finding your purpose, right? And so it's so funny, there's so many ways that we think about purpose, right? You hear so many things of, I've heard, who was it? I think it was Steve Harvey. He said, there's the two most important moments in your life are when you're born and when you find out why, right? And so like just talking about purpose. And then my friend was telling me, I wrote this down. She said, how to find your purpose is it's at the intersection of what you love to do, what you're really good at, or what you do really well, and what you do to serve others, or what do people come to you for, right? And I think we're always on, especially millennials, right? We're always trying to figure out like what is our purpose? Like what is my greater being? Why am I here? Why is my presence on this earth? What am I supposed to do, right? And then, sometimes we get in these areas where we feel stuck or we feel a lull or we feel like that we're just not growing, or we know that we can do better but we just have no idea how to do that, right? And so we get this kind of grief about it, and it's like, oh my god, like I know I'm destined for more, but how do I do that? Or I know that I'm supposed to be doing something, but what is that? Because I like this, but I like this, but I'm also good at this, right? And so we get really stuck in a place, and we really create this grief for ourselves because we just don't know how to operate outside of that, right? And so I wanted to bring someone on who, was in a space, his name is David Richman, and super amazing individual. He has an amazing book, and we'll talk all about that, The Cycle of Lives, where he really highlights stories of, the victory and the triumph of people who had cancer, or their families, and oncologists, right? And so he talks about that, but the journey he even took to get there, was absolutely amazing. And so I wanted to bring him on because he was in a space where he had made some decisions that weren't the greatest, and he was overweight and smoking and certain things like that, right? And he was just kind of there, and then he found his purpose and really tapping into emotionally connecting with others and just showing a little bit of compassion in a place where a lot of times there wasn't a platform in a space for people to do that, right? And so I wanted to bring him on to talk about that, to talk about his book, because again, a lot of times we look in the mirror and we're like, how did I get here? I made bad decisions, but like, God, like, why am I here? And I have no idea how to get out of here. And I have no idea how to move forward in that, right? And he does a really good job talking about that and explaining how you can decide to really decide to move forward in life and really move forward in your purpose, right? And so I'm just really excited to share his story and his journey. And I want you, if you're struggling to find your purpose and you're like, Loryn, I have no idea, how that is, and I have no idea how to do that. I just want you to listen to his story. I want you to listen to how he talks about the stories of others that he is able to share, right? And he says something at the end that's so good, of how you kind of decide to move forward in your life and really move forward and walk into your purpose, right? So I want you to pay attention to that because we've all been there, right? I want you to know that you're not alone. Like at the end of the day, you're not alone. Like when I tell you, I have found my purpose several times in life until I really had to sit down and me and God had to have a conversation. He had to download some things into my spirit, right? We've all been on that quest of trying to find our purpose and all been on that quest of we feel like we should be doing more and kind of get down into this weird place. Like we all have been like we all just want to know why we're here. That is just the simplest human form. And we just want to all know why we're here. And sometimes when we feel like, why am I here? And I don't know why I'm here, right? Like it just causes a grief inside of you. And I want you to know you're not alone in that, right? Like I've been there. I'm sure anyone who's listening with you has been there, right? Because, we're not coming out the womb knowing we're born for this. People are like, I knew I was destined for it. That's great for you. But for the rest of us, we had no idea. And some of us are still trying to figure it out, right? So you're not alone. Definitely pay attention to what David is saying. Definitely take notes, get his book, be inspired. I really just hope that this gives you a little sense of joy, a little sense of peace, and knowing that you will find your purpose if you're looking for it, right? And once you do find it, it's going to be so beautiful and everything that you've imagined because it's exactly what you're supposed to be doing with your life. So I'm going to get into this break really quickly, but I really hope you enjoy this episode. What's up, my loves? I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just wanted to come to you really quickly to let you know about a brand new partnership that I have with Streamline Podcast to bring to you the Podboxx. The Podboxx is literally a podcast in a box. So if you're looking at me on YouTube or if you're listening to me, you're probably wondering what this new equipment is, why I sound so different. It's because I am using the podcast in a box. Literally, the Podboxx is a podcast in a box, you guys. It comes with a microphone, a boom arm, all the cables that you need. It takes 5 minutes to set up. Literally, you get their launch guide book. You get professionally produced intro and outro, so you don't have to worry about that. They'll literally design your cover art for you. They'll upload your episodes for you. All of that is included in this Podboxx. So if you've ever thought about starting a podcast, you literally need this podcast in a box, aka the Podboxx. And because you are a listener of This Too Shall Suck podcast, what we have decided to do is get you $100 off of the Podboxx. Yes, literally you get $100 off just by being a listener. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes, enter the code LWPBOXX, which will be in the show notes as well, and you will get $100 off your journey to start a podcast. I can't wait to hear your podcast, and I can't wait to see you with the Podboxx. And let's get back into the episode. All right, guys, we're back, and I'm so excited, like I said, to have this next guest on. He just has, his story is just amazing. So I'm going to read his bio real quick, and then we're going to get into it. So David is an author, public speaker, and endurance athlete whose mission is to form more meaningful human connections through storytelling. As a former sedentary, overweight smoker, David knew that he needed to focus not on what others wanted out of him, but on what he wanted out of life. His first book, Winning the Middle of the Pack, discussed how to get more out of ourselves than ever imagined. In his second book, Cycle of Lives, David shares stories of people overcoming trauma and delves deeply into their emotional journeys with cancer. David continues to do Ironman triathlons and recently completed a solo 4,700-mile bike ride. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. David to the show.
Thank you, Lo. I appreciate it. I
Of
love your
course.
energy. Let's
Yeah.
talk, man.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's get it. Again, thank you for being here. Like I was sharing with you, before we got on, this episode is just talking about, purpose and the grief and finding your purpose, right? Because it's such a weird thing, always trying to find your purpose. We feel like we're always out here and it's, always something. And so I always like to start out, of course, this is a podcast about grief, right? And so if you can just share a little bit about your story, with grief of any type. I know you lost your sister. I know, obviously
Mhm.
you've kind of transformed. So you can just share your story on grief for those who don't know you.
Sure. So there's a lot behind it, right? Because grief can come in many different ways, and for me, the process of starting to lose my sister to terminal brain cancer, from my perspective, I mean, obviously her perspective was different, but from my perspective, happened when I was kind of at a super low point in my life.
Mm,
I was escaping an abusive relationship with an alcoholic. I had 4-year-old twins.
mm,
I was overweight. I was not happy. I was angry at the world, mostly because I was making the wrong decisions and, like doing things with the wrong motivation. And I decided to make some changes, which included getting out of that relationship, included um, protecting my kids, and then taking a look in the mirror and saying, dude, look at you. You're overweight. You're not healthy. You're a smoker. Like, is this who you want to be? And
yeah.
whatever. So at that same time, I get a call from my sister saying, hey, I got terminal brain cancer. And so this journey that you talked about just a minute ago, that for her, at the same time, for her, it was how do how do I navigate from today to my end of life, which was going to be pretty soon, in the context of husband and young kids and a beautiful career and beautiful friends and that type of stuff. And for me, the journey was, oh, I finally like got my eyes open to maybe I had to make better decisions and
Yeah.
care about what the person in the mirror thinks rather than what everybody else thinks I should be, or what I think they think I should be. So that's kind of where that journey went. And I did lose my sister, but it took me years afterward, Lo, to really understand what I was grieving, because I had grieved with her along the way, and then after she
Yeah.
passed, I kind of dealt with it. But I think for me, the point that it really hit me, the grief really hit me, was to realize that I didn't just lose my sister. I kind of lost the only person that knew me as a kid, because
Mm,
neither parents in my life, and and I don't have any childhood friends, and so that part of my life that was so traumatic, like it is for most people,
yeah.
um, and so impactful in my life, like nobody knows that, right? But her, and
Yeah.
now she's gone, so I'm all alone with that, with all that happened. So I think the grief of losing her. I'm sorry for the long answer,
No, it's fine.
but I think the grief of losing her is something that I think we all understand in common, like what it means like to lose somebody. But
Right.
when you lose someone, and you take it in the context of what else that pulls from your life, that's when it can really become a little bit more profound. So, um, and I discovered that on that bike ride. I
Yeah.
discovered that that's what the thing is that I hadn't grieved, was that, holy cow, man, that little kid me is now all alone, right? Because
Yeah.
nobody will ever know that kid.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You said so much that I wanted to touch on. There was a couple things I want to go back to, like you said, getting out of that abusive relationship.
Mhm.
It's not funny, but you always hear about the woman being abused, but we don't really talk about the man being in an abusive relationship, right? And then you having to
Mhm.
go through this divorce. Like, I just want to dive into that a little bit for any men who are
Sure.
listening, because again, we talk about women, but we don't really talk about a man being abused. What did that look like for you?
Well, I would say that, first of all, I made a really bad choice in the
Mm,
person that I was trying to be with, and
mm,
um, uh, it wasn't until my eyes opened up to the choice, and with the help of a couple of friends who kind of directed me in the right way, that I didn't realize before, but at one point I did, that I actually kind of married my mom, right? The person I was
Mm.
trying to make happy. So I was, my mom was an angry, unhappy person, and I think I always tried my best to try to make her happy. Well, that
Yeah.
was not my deal. But
Right.
then when it came to this woman, I think I tried everything I could to make her happy, and obviously that's not my responsibility. But I didn't know it
Right.
at the time,
Of
and
course.
so the arguing or the disagreement or that you're not being compatible, that's both ways, right? That's both ways. But the violence, the anger, the lashing out physically, that's not something as a man you could respond to in
Right.
and
Right.
just I'm sorry about that. It's just a reality.
It's
Like
true.
like the one time, and I know this is generalization, it's probably not fair, but the one time that you as a husband or you as a man are gonna lash out physically, that's game over, end of story. No questions asked. You have you're in the wrong. There's no justification for it, right?
Right. Right.
Except now you turn it around and you go, well, how are you going to? Because it's not the same stigma for a woman on a man because it's something that's very not talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like I wasn't scared or from day to day. It wasn't anything like that, right?
Right.
It wasn't like a lot of bad situations, but it was bad enough that she ended up getting arrested for it. So that's pretty
Right.
bad. But
Yeah.
I think I think I don't really blame anybody really, except for it was just a situation that I was in that I thankfully I never did return the action because
Yeah.
I knew the one time I did, that would be it, game over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so. Your question is how do you deal with it from a male perspective? Is you got to figure out how to get out of the situation because it
Mm.
cannot escalate. Because if it escalates, you're done.
Yeah. Your life's
You're just
over.
done. And
Yeah.
clearly, if somebody's at that position, either they have a problem or you are the problem, and either way, you need to get yourself out of there.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Because you're right. Like in society, you're done, one and done, but there's a lot of, I don't condone any type of, domestic violence, but like you said, there's a lot of women out here who are doing it. And nobody's really like, everybody's just kind of blinking an eye, like, well, he's a man, he can handle himself. Well, yeah, when he handles himself, he's going to jail. Like, that's literally
Yeah.
what it is.
And look, I'm not even going to say it's the person that's perpetrating the violence that is at fault. Maybe it's the other person for pushing them to that level, right? And
Right.
so, again, I'm not saying that there's blame, but once you find yourself in that position, I feel like you can't explain it away. You can't justify it. You can't make excuses for it. It will never get better unless
Mm,
that person seeks professional help.
mm-hmm.
Um, and most times it won't get better because people don't see themselves properly. They're
Yeah.
not introspective. If you're already down that path, dude, you don't care. You don't care about who you
Yeah.
are.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had a really good friend who told me, well, I was complaining over and over and over. I was complaining about my situation. And finally, my friend, he says to me, he goes, dude, he says, she's not the problem. You're the problem.
Mm,
And I went off on this defensive rant going, what are you talking about? This and that and this and that. And how can I be the problem? And blah, 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 blah. And he said, look, he said, you want her to change and she is not able to. You are able to change and you refuse to realize that you're the one that needs to change, right?
ooh, that's
You need to
good.
get out of there. You need to realize what's important to you. You need to take action. You cannot get her to do it. You're the problem. Go solve your problem. And I'm like, wow, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. That's really good. Shout out to your friend for that. I'm gonna write that down. Use that on a rainy day.
Right?
So circling back to, you oh my God, like you talked about your sister and her kind of being that last piece of your childhood. Again, like we don't think about that, in the journey of grief, that why a lot of times it's so traumatic is
Mm-hmm.
that yes, obviously it's the loss of your sister, but it's a loss of like literally a part of your life. Like, how do you even, the fact, first of all, how did you even come to that conclusion? Because I think that's just profound because people don't think about that, right? And then when
Mm-hmm.
you came to that conclusion, how are you able to move forward knowing that really this kind of piece of you is now gone?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, everybody loses people eventually. Maybe you
Mhm.
lose people consistently, right? And like when I lost my dad, my dad was very old when I was born. He was almost 60 years old when I was born. He died when I was very young.
Mm.
And when I lost him, I could make sense of it, right? Because you lose parents, especially if they're old or whatever, it would make sense. But if he had played some deeper part in my life, especially as it resulted around trauma, then it would be I would have lost this protector, or I would have lost somebody who abandoned me or abused me. Well, I don't even know, right? There's a million things
Yeah.
that are another layer behind just losing someone.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, what happened was I was really contemplating, in that book Cycle of Lives, and I know you started to read a little bit of it, but a lot of it is around people and their family and how they're not able to deal with the emotional issues around trauma. And even if they're super close, sometimes they can't deal with it. And there's not really answers to a lot of those questions. And on
Mhm.
my bike ride, as I'm contemplating these stories and I'm writing the book in my head ahead of time, and I'm on this bike ride to go meet all the people I had talked to. Um, I started thinking about, man, I don't have that family. My dad's gone,
Yeah.
my sister's gone. My mom has been out of my life for more than 40 years. She didn't want kids, and she certainly didn't want me. And
Mm.
um, so I had to come to this idea that, oh yeah, that was the thing that I had to grieve. And then how did I get past it, or how did I
Mhm.
put some perspective into it? I came up with this analogy. You ready for this one, Lo?
I'm ready.
And
I'm ready.
here's the analogy: is that if you look at your life and let's say it's a 25,000 piece puzzle, okay, which would take forever to put
I
together,
was like,
right?
I'm already stressed thinking about it.
I mean, a 25,000 piece puzzle. I mean, it
Right.
would take years and years and years and years to do that.
Right.
And if you committed yourself to doing it the right way and you did put the whole thing together and it's looking good, and as you're getting right near the end, you go, oh my God, the manufacturer missed like 3 or 4 pieces, right? Like there's 3 or 4 pieces missing. Are
Right.
you going to crumble up the whole puzzle and throw it away? Or are you just going to go, well, you know what? Sometimes the puzzle's missing a couple of pieces. What are you going to do about it? And so
That's
in my
good.
in my case, I just look at the fact that not everybody's puzzle has all the pieces there. And
Oh,
sometimes
that's
there's
good.
going to be holes in things. You're not going to get the answers you need. Sometimes things don't make sense. Sometimes they're not fair. And hell, I got a million beautiful looking pieces, and a lot of stuff goes together really, really nicely. So I'm missing a few holes. What are you going to do?
Oh, that is good, David. I like that. I like it, David. I like a good analogy around here.
That's a good
No, that's
analogy.
good.
That's my
Yeah,
that's
that's a
one of my
good one.
analogies.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's trademark, y'all. Don't be trying to take David's stuff. I see ya.
You could take.
Right. No,
Life
that's a
is
good
like
one.
a box of puzzle pieces.
Right. Right. Little Forrest Gump, in there, but adding a
Exactly.
little David on top of it.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I mean, because you're right. Like you said, are you going to just like throw the whole thing off the table because you're missing three or four? Or are you just going to be like, you know what? I mean, that's the crazy thing. It's the beautiful and annoying thing about grief. It's like you're never going to get the answers. You're going to be like, why? Why? Like for me, like, why did I lose my mom and dad at a young, like, that's dumb. Like they were good people. Like, and then there's people walking around here looking crazy, just like your sister. You lost your sister, and then you're in these like you're like, why? But like you said, there's so many beautiful pieces with it. So thank you for that. I love that. So I want to get into, and this is going to lead into the cycle of lives, right?
Yeah.
You started, really this came about from, obviously your sister making that promise to your sister that you were going to raise the money, and
Mhm.
what was it, you were going to ride for 24 hours or
No, I was
run
gonna
for
run. I
run
was
for
gonna
24 hours
for 24 hours. Yeah.
straight, like run for 24 hours
Straight.
straight.
So they do this thing. The American Cancer Society does this thing called the Relay for Life. I don't know if you've heard of
Yep.
it or your
Hmm.
listeners have heard of it, but what normally will happen is a bunch of people get together, put together teams. That's the event's sponsored by the American Cancer Society. Every team has X number of participants, however many you want, and then you hang around this track, maybe a high school track or a track at a local park or something like that. And it's a 24-hour event, and it's meant to give like sense of community, entertainment, education, support to the cancer community. And
Mhm.
all the teams get together and they commit to being on the track for the whole 24 hours. So if you have,
Mm.
30 people on your team, maybe somebody is on there for every 45 minutes or something. So my sister was getting pretty sick, and the Relay for Life, that was the thing that her team was going to participate in, was coming up. And she said, you know what, bro, I want to be there for the whole 24 hours. Like, I want to camp out and watch everybody and thank them and cheer them on and stuff like that. And I said, wow, man, you are not healthy. If you're going to do
Yeah.
that, I will match you. I'll be out there for the whole 24 hours and I'll be with you. So
Mm.
I'll run the whole 24 hours. You sit out there and hang out for the whole 24 hours. And unfortunately, she died like 2 days before.
Ugh.
So she didn't get to see the team out there. But, I mean, I was going to still commit to my end of the bargain because,
Yeah.
I had a choice. She didn't. So I was out there for the whole 24 hours and with friends. My kids were there. By that time, they were about 9 years old, and they stayed with me for the whole 24 hours out on the track and
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, it was crazy at 9 years
Yeah.
old.
I'm like at 9, I'd have been like,
Yeah,
I'm
at
ready to go.
9, yeah. I mean, they took a little nap here and there, but could you imagine 9 years old? We kept track of our laps, and they did about 35 miles each of walking
Wow.
around the track for
9
24
years
hours.
old. That's crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's completely crazy. But I did notice at that time that people were really good about talking about like the tasks around their cancer, how they navigate the school system, how do you find a good doctor, how do you get more information about this type of treatment or whatever. But when it came to the emotional side of it, people were really like very quiet and introverted, maybe even like self-isolating. They didn't
Mm.
want to burden other people. They didn't want to say the wrong thing. They didn't want to look like a jerk. They didn't, it's really a weird thing to kind of navigate that emotional side of it. And I just thought to myself at that time, man, wouldn't it be good to try to shine a light on why we're not able to have those hard conversations at really difficult times? Do you know, like,
Mm.
how many times, Lo, somebody walked by you at work and you see something on their face and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And they go,
Yeah.
oh, last night my neighbor's kid died, and it got hit with cancer, something, and you're just like horrified. You're like,
Yeah.
uh, oh my
Right.
God,
You're
I'm so
like,
sorry. And then you get back to work because you don't know what to say. The hell
right.
can you say? I mean, what can
Right.
you say? And so I thought, well, why is that? And maybe I could just shine some insight into that by talking to a lot of people and trying to figure out some common ground. So that's why I embarked upon that project.
No, I love that. I absolutely love that. So in the book, I was telling you earlier, I was a little bit hooked on Miss Deborah, but you talk about 15 stories, of
Mhm.
people. Like, why was it important for you to get multiple points of views instead of just having one? Because most books they talk about just like you said, the one emotional, but why was it important to get 15 different views? And what did that look like for you?
Well, it's a really good question because I'll tell you, like, me as a reader, somebody that gets inspired by others, movies, whatever moves you. Okay. Like, I'm less likely to be moved by a story of somebody doing something great or one person's tragic story. I'm less moved by that. Like, for example,
Mm.
I think it's kind of nice to read a book about Michael Jordan, how he was able to accomplish what he was able, but I can't really apply that to my life, right?
Mm.
Oprah Winfrey, I can't apply that to my life. I mean, it's just like, I don't understand that. And I also don't understand, like, really difficult, like I lost my leg and I still climb Mount Everest. I mean, awesome stories, but I have a hard time relating to it.
Yeah, they just don't resonate with you as much.
Right. But what I
Yeah.
can relate to is when I can identify with somebody or identify with a piece of their story, or I could really feel what they've gone through, that I could put some parallel to it, or I have some sense of observation where I go, oh man, I could imagine, because they told me this, I could imagine what they might have gone through. And so I thought to myself, why don't I find a bunch of people, all different ages, all different times that they came into view of cancer, whether it was as a patient or a loved one, even like one oncologist, she discovered that she wanted to be a doctor on an 8th grade field trip to a hospital. And now she's an oncologist for 40 years. So
Right.
not, so she's dealt with cancer from a different perspective, but loved ones, survivors, whatever, one and done cancer, five times cancer, super severe, maybe just a fear of cancer. I just wanted all of the different perspectives. But how I framed it low was this. I said, point A is when they encountered cancer, either as a patient, loved one, survivor, whatever. Point B is today.
Mm-hmm.
How did they navigate the emotional journey from A to B or not? How did they not navigate it in relation to all the traumas that happened before A? And that I think gives us, like, if I knew kind of what was going on with people that I could identify with: abuse, bad decisions, abandonment, imprisonment, uh, whatever. If I could kind of get some insight into, oh man, I understand that kind of trauma, then I can maybe understand how they were able to, or how they were not able to deal with the emotional side of it. And if that's the case, then maybe I could figure out a way to connect with them a little bit deeper, because I got another layer of understanding about what they went through.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that's good. So how did you go about finding these people? Was there did you know them through network? Like, how did you go about finding all of these people?
Yeah, most of the people I didn't know.
Mm.
And so I just went on a quest, and I told everybody that I knew what I was doing, and I needed really interesting, evocative stories. I
Mhm.
cold called hospitals and cancer
Yeah.
centers, and I said,
Yeah.
hey, my name is Dave Richman. I'm writing this book. I need some interesting people. Do you know anyone? And then I asked friends and friends of friends, and then I would talk to somebody and I would say, hey, yeah, your story's pretty interesting. Is there anybody I should be talking to? And maybe I talk to them instead of the original person. So I wanted to fill out stories that were really wide ranging, that would touch the most amount of people and not just one perspective. And I also needed stories that were deep and meaningful and kind of like overwrought with inspiration and overbearing in the things that people had overcome in their life. And then I could understand, like, if I could see that, I could go, oh man, like, I understand. Like, I'll give you one super quick example. Like, we all know this person who's going through something really difficult, especially like
Mhm.
medically very difficult, and they're just like always like, no, I'm fine. I'm
Yep.
good. I don't need nothing. Right?
Yep.
I'm good. I can take
Right.
myself to the hospital. I can take myself home.
Mhm.
I can
I
cook for
can do
myself.
my own
I'm good.
chemo. What?
Right. Right. Yeah, I can take myself to chemo. Don't worry about
Right.
me. I'm good.
Right.
Yeah, I know you're busy. Right. We all know that person, right?
Right.
But I think that sometimes, not always, but sometimes there's a lot more behind that. Maybe,
Mhm.
and maybe by knowing more about people, and maybe some of the more hidden things that we don't naturally know about people. Maybe the reason that they don't want to ask for help is because maybe when they were a child and they needed help and they asked somebody, maybe that person abandoned them.
Yep.
Right? Maybe when they asked for help, the person that they asked from gave them the sense that they were being overburdened by asking.
Right.
Maybe they were let down. Maybe in one of their most traumatic times of need, they were too afraid to ask somebody, and now they can't get over that fear of asking for help, because
Right.
they needed to be strong their whole life, and asking for help is being weak or whatever.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so if we understand that a little bit more, then when somebody says to us, and this is a simple, stupid answer, but if somebody says to us, no, I'm fine, I don't need your help, maybe we can say there might be more behind that. And our response is like, okay, Lo, so you telling me you don't want help because you don't want help? Or you telling me you don't want help because you think I really don't mean my offer of help?
That's good.
Or you telling me that you don't want help because it makes you look weak or something? Because I really want to help you. Like,
That's
there's
good. Yeah.
another layer of places that we can go with people that are very, very difficult to go to easily. It's really
Yeah.
hard to get into somebody's personal space like that.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like you said, to your point, there's always some underlying layer, right? Especially when you're going through that type of like traumatic thing and you're like,
Mhm.
why won't you just let me help you? And that was my biggest thing. I was like, why won't you just let me help you? And I know a lot of times when people are grieving and people are like, well, they just won't let me help them. And I'm like, well, there's probably a reason why, sweetheart. Like, you don't need to get so offended. You just need to, show up and be there and uncover why
Mhm.
they don't necessarily need your help because they probably do. So that's good. So when you're going through this journey, right, you decide to write this book, you're talking to these people, you're talking to them specifically about cancer. What feelings of grief were brought up for you from your sister? Like, did you ever feel like, dang, if I would have known this, what I know now, right? In hindsight's 2020, maybe I would have been able to connect more. Did any of those feelings come up when you were doing that, or no, not really?
It's a good question, but I'm going to say not really because my sister and I were able to talk about a lot along her end of life journey, right?
Good. Yeah.
She had a husband very close to him, two young kids, very close to them, a lot of good friends, very close to them. So and she was very outgoing and talkative. So her and I got to talk about a lot of things. What I mostly did when I talked to people. Okay, so I started to talk to some people and they weren't able to talk. They weren't able to go where we needed to go because I
Mhm.
needed to ask them anything. I needed to get to the heart of the matter. Like,
Yeah,
don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me what we need to know.
correct. Yeah.
Right? Like, tell me the truth. And so a
Yeah.
lot of times, a lot of time, multiple times with every single person, they would preface a certain statement or a story with, "Well, I've never really told anybody this."
Mhm.
Right? And that's what I needed to get to. So some people were not able to go there. My skill as an interviewer sometimes wasn't able to bring that out in people. But when I was able to bring that out, what I did learn was a kind of a more profound understanding that we really don't know what people have gone through. I mean, we really
Mm.
don't. And you know, I'm humbled by the fact that I have a really good, wonderful life and I've had a really good, wonderful life when compared to other people. But just in its own bubble, my own life is as wonderful and terrible and tragic and traumatic as anybody else's because it's me. But it's
Right.
certainly, but if I compare it to somebody else's, then I mean, I'm like the luckiest guy alive at times, or maybe I'm the unluckiest guy because that's what we tend to do. We tend to
Right.
compare our situations and it creates these hesitancies. So I learned by talking to people that their lives and the things that they've been through are as enriching or as traumatic or are as perplexing to them or disturbing to them um, as it can be. And I should have no judgment on that. And if I want to connect with them on a deeper level, I need to understand that it's not about me, it's about them. And so I learned a really deep appreciation for that thought of you just had no idea what people have gone through or what they are going through. And if you just take a minute to try to understand and you take a minute to have a safe place for them to tell you and for you to understand a little bit, that's where you can make some really good connection.
Oh no, that's good. That's good. I used to tell people the same thing. I used to be a flight attendant, and I used to tell people all the time when people would come on the plane acting 10 types of crazy. I'm like, you just never know what anybody has gone through. I was at work 2 weeks after my mom passed, smiling in people's faces because I had to, right? Like, you
And
just never know. You just
it,
never know. So that's important.
you don't know, and you don't know what would trigger you to have some type of maybe short reaction or a tear come out of your eye or being distant minded because you have no idea when that's going to come on and somebody that sees that might go, oh my god, she's an airhead, or oh,
Right.
can't handle the pressure of her job, look at her,
Right.
and meanwhile you're just having a little thought that's like, oh, it's about my mom, right? And but you're not going to tell you might not even tell most people that
Right.
what was
Right.
going on right then. And so I think if we can understand that, it gives us a little more compassion to realize that people are going through trauma, and when they are going through trauma, what are some of the things we can and can't do, or should or shouldn't do, um, to try to make that deeper connection, make it easier on them, make it easier on us. have some positive interaction because of it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think, again, to your point, if we can just have a little bit more compassion in the world, it would just make it just such a better place. Just an ounce, not a, you don't have to have a lot, just an ounce of compassion can
Mhm.
change the trajectory literally of the world and someone's life. So so good. So good, David. So, you have 15 amazing stories, right?
Mhm.
But, and, obviously they're unique and they're different. But what were some of the similarities that you saw, in these 15 stories when you were, listening to them and writing them?
Well, they're all inspirational. That's one thing that's very now. Some of them were tragic, right? Some stories
Yeah,
did not end well, and
of
it's a
course.
sad
Yeah.
thing about life that sometimes it sounds like. I mean, I don't know, but it sounds like you lost both parents when you were
Mm.
young. I lost my dad when I was pretty young, and I lost. I mean, I have not had a conversation with my mom since I was about 18 years old.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So that's a
right,
loss. Right.
yeah, those are a lot. People lose people all the time, right? It's just some nonsense that we all have to go through. But
Hmm.
out of that, I realized that everybody's story has some inspiration to it, some growth out of it, a way to rebirth, a way to move on from grief stronger. Like, not always, but there's always the opportunity for it. And each one of these stories is very inspirational because they're people just like you and me who have overcome whatever we needed to overcome. And for
Right.
us, it's as big as whatever mountain we had to overcome, not compared to anybody else, but just
Right.
in our own lives. And it's really amazing to have seen and be inspired by what people have gone through. Um, so that was one similarity. Another similarity is it seems that there was a lot of a general consensus that people didn't want sympathy. Don't tell me you're sorry. It's not your fault, right? Don't look at me with puppy dog eyes because that is not making me feel better, right? So that kind of sympathy thing, and I have learned from doing this project. It's much better to try to be empathetic than sympathetic, right? Instead of like this like, oh my god, you poor thing, not
Yeah.
like, but like, oh my gosh, I mean, like, what does that feel like? Like, how were you close to your parents? Like, how often do you think about them? Is that really hard for you? Like, try to develop some empathy if you care, if you're trying to make a
Right.
authentic connection.
Right.
So I think the lack of or not wanting sympathy is a thing, and I'll tell you one that's not 100% at a high level with everybody, but each story had a little bit of this recurring theme around self-isolating or keeping people at a distance when it came to the emotional side of things.
Mm.
I don't want to burden people, or
Hmm.
I can't trust them, or there was never anybody around that I could trust, or whatever the million reasons are. But there was a very recurring theme of isolation. We just don't talk about it, right? Like we said early on, right? From the male perspective of maybe being an abuse, we just don't talk about it. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's not what we talk about. And
Yeah.
up until a few years ago, we didn't really talk about PTSD
Oh,
up
yeah. Nope.
until I mean, literally up until 2 years ago, did the average corporation boardroom talk about Black Lives Matter and
Right.
social justice and social reform? Hell no.
Right.
They
Right.
talked about profit. And now, oh, well, certain things enter the conversation where you go, okay, like maybe there's a little bit of this kind of like, we could evolve, we could learn, we could be a little
Hmm.
more 360. And so, um, that just by talking about it, just by allowing ourselves to talk about it, even if we say the wrong thing, even if we're stupid, even if we learn from the things that we say that are wrong, whatever, but just by talking about it, I think we kind of end that isolation and that distance between us. And so
Hmm.
that was the whole meaning for the book, my whole driving purpose for the book. And um, hopefully the timing on it's appropriate enough that people will be willing to talk more about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. You're absolutely right. Like just having a little bit more empathy because it's funny that you say that about the sympathy because my sister and my dad were the same way. Like, don't be feeling bad for me. And I'm like, okay, I don't feel bad. I'm just saying, like, I hate that it happened to you. They're like, "Don't do it." And I'm like, oh, I got it. Like it, but like you said, I get it. Like I get it. Like you've already heard this news. You already have to like figure out how to fight it. And then somebody's like, oh, what can I do? And it's like, can you just back up and like just be there? Like
Right.
calm down. Like literally. So I like completely understand that that is like the reoccurring theme, you know. And again, that self isolation is really. I'm glad you said that because it's really important to talk about that because you do feel alone. And I've had this conversation with my sister. She's like, you feel alone. You feel like you have nobody to talk to. Even someone who's had cancer, like you just feel like, oh my God, like what? Like I don't want to come and tell you that I'm feeling bad today or that I'm tired today. So amazing. Like if y'all get this book, we're gonna do a giveaway, but y'all go buy it for those of y'all who don't win the giveaway. But obviously we're talking about this and amazing book and this amazing purpose. Do you have, I know you don't have one, but I just have to ask, do you
Yeah.
have like a favorite, story in the book that you resonated with more?
Oh man, that's really tough because every story, everyone kind of has a point to it, like an overriding point to it. I try to like I'm not in the story. I pulled myself out of their stories because their story's not about me.
Right.
My editor taught me that, right?
Yeah.
Their story's about them, not about you. So back yourself out of their story. If you want to write any commentary interaction with them, do it in a different space. So I have 15 stories, and in between each story is a little bit of an outro and intro, and then a tiny bit of talk about the bike ride, right? And so that's how we get kind of my thoughts on it. But I mean, geez, so each story is really really amazing. I'll tell you one that I talk about kind of regularly that really made a lot of sense with me. It resonated with me. When I tell the story, I get people that go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." So I don't like I'm not gonna knock people that like put up little yellow stickies, on the mirror that says, smile, the day is gonna be beautiful or what. Right. I'm not that person, right?
Right, right.
So I'm gonna roll my eyes if you give me a little kind of affirmation that is out of context and doesn't make sense. Like,
Right,
right?
right.
Like, I don't know, whatever it is. And so, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
Like
right,
I gotta feel it. You can't just tell me something and it sinks in. I gotta feel it. And
right.
so there's this one story, Patricia, and you haven't got to Patricia yet, but Patricia's this ridiculous, amazing woman who has had to deal with cancer 5 different times over a 35-year period.
That is insane.
And her story is not only about that, but it's about the love of her husband that has endured through all of that up and down, tragedy and the whole lifetime around dealing with cancer. But her story is a little bit more than that because before she met her husband, right before and before she got her first cancer, she escaped a 4-year terribly abusive relationship, or one where she had to cut off all ties from friend and family. She was put in the hospital.
Wow.
If the dude even thought she was thinking something, he would beat the crap out of her. And so
Wow.
it was absolutely terrible. She escaped that. And so what I took from her story is near the end of me talking to her, I said, Patricia, like, how do you get through this? Like how like decades worth of this stuff. How do you deal with
Right.
it? And what she told me was, without the context, what she said to me, I would have rolled my eyes at because I'd have been like, oh man, what a stupid little
Yellow
explanation that.
sticky note.
I love sticky note. Yeah, thank you for that sticky note. But what
Right.
she told me was, she said, look, David, she said, we all have our time in the barrel. Like everybody has their own time in the barrel. She goes, but what I decided to do after I got cancer was every single day I was going to get up, I was going to put my feet on the ground, I was going to make my bed and go about my day.
Mm.
She goes, sometimes I couldn't do anything more than make my bed, and then I laid right back down into it because I was so tired from the chemo or from whatever. She goes, but every single day, my goal is to get up, put my feet on the ground, make my bed, and go about my day. And she said, if I can do that, then everything's good. And I'm just like, whoa, right? Like, wow. Now, take away her whole story. If I would have said, hey, Patricia, what's your secret to life? And she would have said, I just put my
Get
feet
out
on
of
the
bed.
floor, make my bed, and go about my day. I would have been like, oh, good grief. I mean,
Here
seriously,
she goes.
right? But when you know how hard it must have been for her to put her feet on the ground and get up out of bed after
Yeah.
just enduring horrible, after caring for her dad while she was going through chemo and he's going through chemo, after how hard it must have been to burden her husband with the thought that she was going to die over and over and over, how hard it was for her to escape this abusive relationship, what kind of guilt she must have felt for cutting off her family and friends because she had to and they didn't know why. I mean, all of this stuff. And she just goes, yeah, well, my secret is put your feet on the ground, make your bed, and go about your day. I'm like, dang, that makes sense. That's one of my favorite stories, only because it makes me realize that you have no idea what people have gone through, what they're going through. And if you give yourself a minute just to really understand their story, you could really be moved and form a good connection with people. And so that's I think every story has that kind of component to it, but that's one that always sticks in my head.
Yeah, because it's so crazy. Like you said, it's just something so simple, yellow sticky note moment, right? But it's just
Yeah,
like you think about it, like we can literally get up, every day and make our bed. And we're just like, okay, like I'm just getting up and making my bed, right? But this woman is like, I literally am getting up and making my bed, and that's all I could do today, but I at least did that.
yeah.
Right. And so, like, I think, I hope that, when you're listening to this, as you're listening, that like what is your get out the bed moment? Like, what is your get out the bed moment when you're grieving, right? And a lot of times that is the moment when you're grieving, is getting out the bed and laying back down, or getting out the bed and turning the tea, whatever it is. So good. And so, to kind of tie it up, you were in this really kind of terrible place, right?
Mhm.
Overweight, smoking, abusive relationship, kind of trying to find your way, right? And so now you have this amazing purpose. You've written this book, right? For someone who's listening, is like, how did he get from that to like having now this like riding across the country, like having this amazing idea, having this amazing book? Like, how did you even get to be able to do that from that place that you were at?
It's a great question. It's one that I feel very fortunate to have an answer to. It took me a long time to get an answer to that question, right? Because
Mm,
I'm not that person, right? Until I changed, I was not that person.
yeah.
I was not. And so I think what for me, what it just came down to was that I had this awakening, this moment where I realized that I had lived my whole life for other people. And
Mm,
not that's not, I don't mean this like you should be self-centered or you should be selfish or only think about yourself. I don't mean that. But I mean, like at work, I would do something because I thought that's what the boss wanted, right? A
mm-hmm.
relationship I would do because I thought, oh, I got to be a certain way to make this person happy. Or in order for some situation to work, I had to be a certain way. I got to be a better, parent because whatever. I never really did it for myself. And when I realized that people weren't looking really, they didn't care. Like they're just passerbyers in my life, and I'm just a passerby in there. I got to live my
Yeah.
own life. Then I said, well, if you're doing the right things and you're a good person, then just do them for yourself, right? And so that became a new kind of mindset for me. It's not like I didn't care what people thought, but that's just not the way I measured myself. I
Mm,
finally just said, you know what? Okay, maybe if you look at me, I'm overweight, fat, smoker, and I'm trying to get in shape. I don't care what you think of me. I just care what I think of me. And
yeah, that's
so,
good.
you know what I'm saying? I don't want to make it more dramatic than what it is, but I just started caring more about who's looking in the mirror rather than everybody else, what I think they might be thinking about me. And most of the time they weren't thinking about me. And what the hell? I was making all about that, right?
Right,
Most
right,
of the time people could care less. And I'm
right.
making oh, why aren't they nice to me? Dude, they don't even see you walk by, dude.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, they got their own life to live. They're in their own heads. It's not about you. So,
Right.
so I had to really learn that and become like I had to be like at the same time become self-centered and at the same time not be self-centered. Like it's not about
Right.
you in their lives. It should be about me and my life,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And so then I said, well, if that's the case, then why don't you worry about what the guy in the mirror thinks? And maybe he doesn't want you smoking. Maybe he wants you to be healthy.
Mm.
Maybe he wants to see if you can run a mile or do 5 miles or do an Ironman or run for 24 hours or whatever, right? And so I started to think, hey, yeah, it's if nobody's watching and nobody cares, but I'm always going to know that maybe is a better motivation.
That's good. That's good, David. That's good.
Right?
That's good because again, like you
Well, it
said,
worked for me.
we just get like in a place where like, oh, well, what are they saying? It's like nobody is literally even paying attention, and it's not rude. It just nope because everyone's paying attention to themselves. Like they don't have
Dude,
time for me.
how many times have you been? How many times have you been like at a restaurant or something, or you're at a party or something, and you see 4 or 5 people sitting over there on the sofa or on the table, like, and you're out of earshot, and one of them looks at you, and they all start laughing, and you're going, "Man, what the hell are they saying about me?" Right? And then if you did walk over there and you said, "What were y'all laughing about?" They'd be like, "We were telling a story about a dog. I don't know what the hell you're talking
Right? They're
about."
like, and
Like,
you
we were not
are.
talking about you. We didn't even look at you.
Right, you about to start a whole fight because they're like, "And you are."
Yeah, like, like, right? It's not about you. It wasn't even remotely about you. And we're very conscious about that. We tend to think that we're on people's minds a little bit more. Maybe sometimes we are. Maybe we're under a microscope sometimes, but most of the time, we just got to live our own lives. And I did not know that for a lot of years. It did. I
Mm,
just it I just wasn't aware enough to know that I got to live my own life. You know.
yeah, yeah. So it sounds like really, I guess the biggest thing when it comes to like, okay, this is going to be my purpose in life is just making the decision for yourself and looking in the mirror and being like, this is who I want to be. I don't want to be overweight anymore. I don't want to smoke anymore. I want to do triathlons. Like I
Mhm.
want to do these things. So it sounds like it just comes down to making a decision for yourself. Does that sound about right? Like,
It's totally right. I mean, look, imagine when you said, I'm going to embark upon doing this podcast, right?
yeah,
And people would say, well, you don't have the equipment. You never hosted anything before, and nobody's ever going to listen. And what the hell
yeah,
are you going to talk about anyway? And who's going to be attracted to your show? And right, you think maybe that's what all people are going to say, but you know what? And even if they did say it, if it's something that you want to do and you're doing good, and you can even connect with one person, which is what your purpose is just to have one positive impact on somebody, so
yeah,
that you can connect something in a positive way. I mean, isn't that worth it if that's what gives you joy and fulfillment? And so it's a really empowering thing to worry more about what you think than what everybody else thinks, especially if I mean, take away being a bad person or doing bad things. Let's take that off the table. If you're not doing bad things and you're not hurting people, then why not be self-serving? Do you know? Like
yeah.
I cook my family dinner all the time. I don't do it for them. I do it for me because I love doing it. Right?
Right, right. Yeah. No, that's real. I mean, oh God, David, so good. I could talk to you all night, but I'm not going to keep
Yeah.
you all night. But I always like to end off and ask the question, for anyone who's listening to this, who is like, okay, David said, I got to make a decision to make my purpose. And he did this amazing thing. And I want to do the same thing, right? What is the biggest takeaway you want them to carry with them as they listen to this episode?
Hmm. That's a big burden. Let me see. Uh, no, here I'll tell you a story. Let me tell you a
Okay.
story. Okay, so only because it relates to your hometown, Atlanta. So
Okay.
there's this race, okay, and people there's going to be 100 people in the world that ever heard of it, but it's called the A2A. It's
Yeah.
Athens to Atlanta, and it's been around for about 40 years, and
Okay.
it's a race that's about 85 miles, something like that, from
I was gonna
Athens
say
to
that's long. Athens to Atlanta
Atlanta.
is long.
and it's a race that's done on rollerblades. Yeah. 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 A couple hundred people every year get together. They started at Athens at the little town center, and they finish at, I forget what, Piedmont Park. Is that
Yeah.
the
Jesus.
and I entered this thing having no business doing it, right? I mean, first of all, why would you want to? Second of all, how could you?
Right.
It's a pretty stupid thing to do. But so I'm doing it, and I could tell you a lot of stories from that day because it was pretty funny. But one thing what I took away from it, and it's the way I live my life, is that about 30 miles in, I'm heading up, and they call it the gentle rolling hills of Georgia. There's nothing gentle about the rolling hills of Georgia. When you're
There's
on
not.
rollerblades, especially,
There's not.
those are some ridiculous hills. And I had no business being in this race, no business being on roller skates, no business going 85 miles. And I'm about 30 miles in, and it was a hot, hot day. I'm sweating all over the place, and I'm seeing this mountain I got to climb, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is just stupid, like it's stupid. And I'm leaned over, and I'm leaning on my knees, and I'm turned to the hill sideways so I don't, go back down it. And I just see this line of sweat on the ground, and I go, oh my God, like I just go home, like you don't belong here. And then I thought, if I make it one step further, because I know I just reached my max. That was it. I was done. That's the most I could ever do, right? And I just said, if I could just go one step further, I would learn something new, right? And if I take another step beyond that, I'm going to find something new about myself, and something new about myself, and something new about myself. And so I figure, in answer to your question, that when I already know everything that there is to know, I might as well just go home, pack it up, and say, okay, it's all over. The race is over. But I still believe that every time something gets really hard, or I don't recognize when something beautiful happens, or whatever, I'm always thinking, if I can take one more step, if I can just go a little bit further, if I can push a little bit harder, if I become a little smarter, if I could just, whatever, a little bit more than what I'm doing now, I'm going to learn something new about myself. And that's what drives me to keep doing all the things that I do, is because I'm wanting to learn more, and I'm wanting to find out what I'm all about. So I would say that's kind of a thing that drives me, is I got this picture in my head of that race, and me just looking there saying, that's it, I'm done. And I think if I would have gone home, I wouldn't have done any of the stuff that I've done since,
Oh, David, that's so good. Oh my God, that was so good.
Well, it's true. It's true. It's just, you got to pay attention to that stuff so you can grow,
Yeah, yeah. But the fact that you were even like on your deathbed at a roller skating, like you noticed that, right? So
Yeah.
it's just it again, it's just a tribute to the fact of you just being self-aware and recognizing like, hey, like there's like I have to do better, right? And it somebody listening, it gave them hope to say, if I can just do one more step and one more thing and learn one more thing about myself, then I'm good, right? Then maybe
Mhm.
I can remove a little bit of this grief that I'm having and kind of walk into my purpose. So, so good, David. So good. Look at my phone going off. See, my phone got too excited. So, but David, thank you so much again for being here. If they want to reach out, if they want to buy the book, where can they find you at?
Well, thank you. The 100% of the proceeds, anything that comes to me from the book, goes to the charities that were chosen by the book participants. So I'm not looking to make any money off the book. It's just a passion project. I'm sure you don't make a whole lot of money off your podcast, right? It's just a passion project. And so you hope to touch people, and if some good can come from it, all the better, because, that's just what's driving you. So for me, I spoke to each one of the book participants or their families, and I said, which charity is important to you? And so there's the Moffitt Cancer and Moffitt Cancer Center in Florida, American Cancer Society, Children's Hospital of LA, all these different charities that are receiving the proceeds from the book. So if anybody wants to buy it, just know that the money's going to a good cause. And wherever books are sold, you can go to your bookstore. Most people buy books on Amazon. The Audible is out. which is really cool because each one of the people, each one of the stories is narrated by a different actor.
Yep.
So it's
That's why I was listening
really
to Deborah.
oh, okay. Oh, so you were listening. So you're
I
further.
was
I
listening.
haven't listened to the whole Audible yet.
Yeah.
It's really moving. Like it really is touching a nerve in me because some of the people are past and to hear the voice and it's a little bit moving because I talk to them so deeply. But I'll get to it. But yeah, the Audible's out. It could be on a reader or you could just get the book and most people do that through
Yeah.
Amazon.
Of course. Awesome. And what about you? Have any social medias if they want to reach out and talk to
I
you?
do. If you want to talk to me, go to my website. It's cycleoflives.org. I love to talk to people. I love to talk to groups, book clubs, organizations, you name it. And you can connect with me on Instagram or Facebook. Just look up Cycle of Lives.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, David, for being here so much. I know that you have helped so many people, and you guys follow me on social media so you can get into the giveaway for the Cycle of Lives. But thank you again for being here. Thank you for everything you're doing, and just keep on just doing amazing things. You're going to keep touching people.
Ditto, right back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Ah, you guys. I hope you like I said, I hope that helps you in your quest for finding purpose and getting some peace in that, right? Because we get so down on ourselves and we create such a grief in ourselves because we feel like we should have everything figured out, right? That we're not human and we're not going to make mistakes. Like that's just gonna happen. Like you're just literally. You know what's crazy is I am this year. My goal is to read the whole entire Bible. So I am literally doing a Bible plan that has you reading the Bible every single day. Chapters of the Bible, and they explain kind of the chapter. So it's really good. But um, in the beginning, when God made us, right? Like he literally made us in his image, right? And then we as humans over and over and over again made the decision to be destructive, to make bad choices and just do terrible things, right? Like it's just human nature for us to sin. It just is what it is, right? And so it's human nature for you to feel a way because you're not perfect. We're like yes, we're made in the image of God, but as humans, we're just not perfect, right? And so it's okay to be in those moments of being down and feeling like you should be doing more and all of that, right? But like David was saying, like he had to look in the mirror and make a decision to say, who cares what these other people are thinking? Like I have to make a decision to be my best self. I have to make a decision that I don't want to be overweight anymore. I have to make a decision to do that, right? And so you just look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm going to make a decision that I'm going to find my purpose, right? And when I find my purpose, I'm going to stay on that purpose and it's going to be so great. But until you make the decision that you want to really find your purpose and stay in that purpose, then there's not like you're going to always be on that quest, right? And sometimes it's just going to change. Like you may think, hey, this is my purpose. And you're going on that and you're going on that. And you're like, I don't really think that's my purpose, right? You know what I mean? And that's okay too. But to David's point that he said so just amazing, when he was talking about his roller skate race, right? As long as I just take one more step, right? If I just learn one more thing, right? Like that's always going to be your journey and your purpose. Like I'm always learning something in my purpose. Like, yes, I know my purpose, but am I always learning something in it? Yes, because that's what life is. That's what it should always be. Like, I want to learn more about what this is that God's given me. I want to learn more about how to make it the best that it can be. I want to learn more about how to be the best Loryn Denise that I can be, right? And so you're always going to do that. And so, when you get in those moments and you're like, dang, like I don't know my purpose, that's okay. That's okay. Like have your moment, say, grief, let it happen, let it go through. But, after you move forward in that, right? Like decide, okay, I had the moment, but I really, really, really am ready to find my purpose. Like, just do that, right? And know that you're always going to learn something in it. It's always going to be, ever growing and ever changing and ever evolving, right? Because that's what, we are doing as humans and we should be ever evolving and ever changing, right? And that you're on the right path and you're going to find your purpose. And there's no particular time limit when you have to find your purpose. When you find your purpose, it's going to be at the right time for you. Don't let anybody rush you into it and think you should be doing something else that you're doing. When it is time for you to find your purpose, God is going to show that to you, and he's going to reveal that to you, and it's going to be at the right time for you. So you already know, as I always end off every episode, as I always say, as you are on the quest to find your purpose, as you are on a quest on this journey to, be the best version of yourself that you can be, right? Be kind to yourself and give yourself grace, because if you don't, who will? That is it, you guys. Thank you so much for listening to another week's episode of This Too Shall Suck podcast, a fresh perspective on grief. If you are not already, follow me on social media. Make sure you are following me so I can tell you about this giveaway and so you can be a winner. And also, you can follow me on social media at This Too Shall Suck podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You can just follow me on Instagram for the giveaway. It's fine. I won't penalize you if you're not following me on Facebook, because I know everyone doesn't have it, but make sure you are following me there and on LinkedIn as well. But if you don't have social media, make sure you connect with me. Send me an email at hello@thistooshallsuckpodcast.com. I love talking to you guys and responding to any emails, any DMs, or any comments that you have. This episode and every episode is produced by my amazing producer, Mike Sick, and every piece of music that you hear in here is produced by my producer, Jimmy Samaj. You guys, I love you all so much. Have an amazing week. I'm sending you love and light in your life because you deserve it. I'll see you on the next episode. Mwah. All right, my loves, I hope you all enjoyed that episode. You can actually listen to This Too Shall Suck podcast, a fresh perspective on grief, on all listening platforms. And make sure, if you're not already, following me on social media on Instagram and on Facebook at This Too Shall Suck podcast. And you can hit my website as well. Learn more about your girl, Loryn Denise, at www.thistooshallsuckpodcast.com. If you love this episode, if it resonated with you, make sure you hit that like button. Let me know, because I know I need to make more videos like that for you. And meet me in the comments. Let's talk about it. I love talking to y'all. And make sure you definitely hit that little bell, that little subscribe button. Thank you guys as always, and I'll see you on the next episode.